The return of one of the best shows on TV right now is here. Is it worth the wait? Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 1 once again stars all the returning cast members. You got Millie Bobby Brown, Finn Wolfhard, Winona Ryder, David Harbour, Gaten Matarazzo, and plenty more. And this season picks up 6 months after the Battle of Starcourt. Struggling with the aftermath, our group of friends are separated for the first time, and navigating the complexities of high school hasn't made things easier. In this most vulnerable time, a new and horrifying supernatural threat surfaces, presenting a gruesome mystery that, if solved, might finally put an end to the horrors of the Upside Down. Now, I, along with what seems like everyone else on the planet, loves this show. I have been loving this show for a little while now. I was a little late to it, but once I stumbled across it, I fell in love, and I was eagerly anticipating this Season 4. We haven't seen these characters since 2019. It's been 3 years now, and I think we've all been really waiting for this. And when it comes down to it, this is another great season, filled with a lot of highs and some lows. Now, when you have a new season, you're going to have new characters as well, so let's start off with talking about them. For the most part, I really enjoyed the new additions. The standout would definitely have to be Eddie, who is such a fun, kind of like punk rock character. He has the rebellious tendencies, and Dustin, who we all know and love, kind of looks up to him. He's kind of like this new Steve in a way. So Eddie was a lot of fun. But also Chrissy I did enjoy. I won't go into specifics about where her character ends up, but I wouldn't have minded actually seeing more of her. Her role in the season is fairly small, but I think the backstory that they kind of set up was a little interesting. Jason is basically the new D-bag. He's the star basketball player who Lucas kind of looks up to. He doesn't really have an arc, he's kind of just there to be like the new bully. But I feel like his role in the show is going to play in more later on, maybe even later in this season or the next season. But I think the character that was kind of setting up to be a new fan favorite was Argyle. Now, I didn't particularly love his character. He's basically just there for comedic relief. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with him being there, but he kind of is just there. Those are most of our new characters. There's still new ones that kind of just like pop up here and there. And then you have the new villain of the season, Vecna, who is a very menacing character. I felt physically tense whenever he was on screen. He's probably the biggest threat that we've seen facing these characters. He's very powerful. He has a lot to do with the Upside Down. But the big takeaway I have from his character is how well he looks, mostly due to the prosthetics, makeup, all that stuff. It is top tier. I can only imagine how many hours that actor had to sit in the chair. Now, going into the season, they were talking about how, oh, this is going to be a scary season. There's going to be a lot of more horror elements. The show as a whole has kind of always had horror elements, but it has never really dived into that until now. This is probably the scariest season we've gotten yet. There are jump scares and a lot of body horror. We're talking like bones snapping, like scenes that are genuinely terrifying. I actually found myself looking away a lot. I just didn't want to look at it. Like, it's creepy stuff. At the end of episode 1, they tell you that we're not messing around this season. And we're talking about all the body horror elements. That does lead into one of my issues with this season, and that is the CGI is very off and on. From what I've heard, this show had a budget that's like unlike any show that I think there's ever been. Yes, what I've heard could be false, and I obviously don't know where they put a whole chunk of their money into, but I feel like you could have put more money into the CGI. It was a little off. It felt unfinished almost. I mean, for a show that is such like high caliber television, I was assuming we would get a little bit better CGI. Like we've seen before, the show has a great comedic element to it, as well with tackling the drama and horror side of it. And this season still manages to be funny. I feel like Dustin has a lot of the main jokes, and he's still the funniest character to me, and one of the best characters. But I think it was nice that they had these jokes with the specific storylines, because the season has a fairly dark tone. I mean, this is kind of the end of the world. So while it is very bleak and you can feel the weight of these characters as they have to save the world, you still get these funny moments. And I feel like for my last positives before I get into the negatives is that the show feels very cinematic because of these long run times in each of the episodes. I believe in volume 1 at least, the longest episode we got was like an hour 45. This is a length of a movie. And I can see why they made these longer length episodes, because there's a lot that they want to do in this season. And obviously with the budget, you can feel it behind the camera. Just the production quality and the sets, it's just really well put together. Yes, it's kind of always been like that, but this is the season that felt the most big, especially in terms of the episodes. But now let's go into my negatives with the season. And just to clarify, we're not looking at the season as a whole, because I, just like you, have only seen the first volume. I have not seen the final 2 episodes of the season. I decided to split the season up into volume 1 and 2. Volume 1 having 7 episodes, volume 2 having 2. So these issues could maybe be resolved by the end, and I will revisit this season when the volume 2 comes out. But like I mentioned, with all of these new characters, this season feels very overstuffed. And while yes, a lot of the characters are grouped up into their specific storylines, you have to give backstory to all the new characters to make them feel fleshed out. You have to obviously give more depth to our main characters so then we can still love them like we do, and give stuff for them to do. Then also set up this big bad and set up where the show is going to end, because we only have 1 more season left, I believe. Like, there is a lot to dive into, and at times it can feel a little much. And specific storylines are more interesting than others. Well, that's kind of how it's always going to play out. It's very rare where you are invested in every single storyline that the season is telling. This might be a little bit of a hot take. It's not necessarily a spoiler, but I feel like the storyline with 11 being experimented on and going more into that, I found to be less interesting than pretty much everything else. Personally, I've kind of always felt that with the show. I've never been so invested in the storyline. I'm not saying I dislike the character of 11. I think she's a great character. She's our lead character. But to me, it isn't inherently all that interesting, and I find myself checking my phone, looking forward to whatever we're gonna jump to next. Like, don't get me wrong, it doesn't like completely drag the season down for me. And also the stuff with Mike and Will and Jonathan, I'm just not that interested in it. For me, there's just not enough of a pull to these storylines that I feel like I want to just keep going back to them. And that could be very well due to the characters. I'm not in love with Mike, I'm not in love with Jonathan or Will. But then when you go to Dustin and Steve and Lucas and Nancy, all that stuff over here I find a lot more interesting than everything over here. When the show is finished, I feel like I'm going to be looking at the show and I'm going to feel like, is everything feel rushed? And I feel like in this season, a lot of it feels rushed. Maybe they're rushing towards that final season. They're just trying to do a lot in this season, and I don't feel like all of it necessarily might have needed to be there. And again, I wasn't all that interested in it. We'll see how it plays out in the end though. And my next thought isn't necessarily an issue with Stranger Things, but more Netflix. I would love to hear what you watching this video think of the binging kind of strategy that Netflix does. Let me know down below what you personally think of it. Would you rather watch episodes week to week or binge it all at once? Because I, especially with Stranger Things, feel like this show would have worked much better as a week-to-week basis. The biggest reason I feel is this season would last longer in conversations. For the majority of us, we're going to be talking about this season this weekend, then maybe come next weekend, we're kind of just going to be done with it. But if you were to have a new episode a week, and next week, and the following week, it would be more stretched out, and the conversation would be stretched out. This would be an event for the summer, but instead it's kind of a chapter in the summer. And I was really hoping that Netflix would maybe change it last minute. They obviously didn't. And I feel like me personally trying to binge this entire show, long episodes you're watching, this is like 7+ hours of Stranger Things, which is not an issue with Stranger Things as a show. But for me, who wants to binge it, doesn't want to find any spoilers, it feels like a lot, and it's a lot to do. You have to dedicate a day to watching this season. I'm pretty sure at first they were supposed to split it up and have like 4 premiere this weekend and then the 5 in volume 2. That might have worked a little bit better, but now the 7 and 2, I'm just not feeling it. So again, not necessarily an issue with the show, but more of an issue with Netflix. So Netflix, if you're watching, listen up. But aside from that, I'm still very satisfied. I enjoyed the hell out of this season. Not a perfect season, but I really enjoyed the new characters. And I didn't even touch on the performances. All the performances are great as always. Millie Bobby Brown has a lot to do in this season. Sadie Sink as Max. Each character has emotional weight to them, and each of the actors playing those characters gives it their all in each of their performances. I thought the fact that they went more for a horror kind of season was a lot of fun. The new big bad Vecna is very menacing, and the ending had me hooked. I can't wait to see what the final 2 episodes hold, as well as next season, everything they have in store for us. So overall, I'm not disappointed, and I would say it is worth the wait. But as of right now, I'm going to give Stranger Things Season 4 a B+. This grade could very well change once we see the final 2 episodes, and maybe my issues were resolved. We'll have to see. I look forward to talking more Stranger Things with you guys, and if you don't want to miss my Volume 2 review, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any further videos. And as always, look forward to more videos coming soon. My name is Ben, people call me Meter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.